The first guy that I contacted was John at Vulture Rock, and I heard what happened to him, or as far as his downfall.
Yeah.
But I was working with him. He's like, hey, how's the scene out there? And I'm like, dude, good, bro. This is what I'm looking for. And he was like, man, if I send you, so much amount, can you get rid of it? And I'm like, yeah, bro.
Oh,
I was like, dude, definitely. So I had hit him up, and he was just like, you know what, man, he sent me a box, bro. This was he sent me vinyl shirts. You might want to put on the headset.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Do me a favor, bro. Make sure the switch is on right quick.
Yeah, it is.
Check. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I got you.
Is it unidirectional? Or is it
Yeah, it'll capture as long as you're in front of it.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, bro, I contacted him, and he was just like, yeah, man, I'll send you this and that. And from there, it was a go. I mean, before I knew it, dude, I mean, I had a box full, I received it, and I'm like, dang, what the heck am I going to do with this? But I started going to the events, and just getting rid of, selling it back in my trunk,
Yeah, well, I mean, Vulture Rock was really influential back then, up until relatively recently. And it's iconic, you know what I mean? Yeah.
But man, we are live. Hello, everybody. Spider here, the Fight Car Podcast, coming to you once again from the studio in downtown San Antonio. My guest, bro, introduce yourself to the world, my man.
I'm Richard Crenwelge. I'm the Sambo coach here at House of Jiu-Jitsu.
And bro, of course, we were talking among us just about life, as far as what we've gone through a couple of years back. It hasn't been that long. But man, just to start off, this weekend, it was the Sambo Summit 2022. Over the weekend, man, great turnout.
Yes.
There was 50 plus, I believe, on Saturday, and then a few less on Sunday, but nonetheless, it was a great turnout, man.
Yeah, that was really cool. The idea behind the summits or the training camp is just to grow Sambo on a more grassroots level, so that way people participate in the sport, have a better idea of actually what it is. And then for people who are interested in competing, Julian up in Dallas, who runs Sambo Texas, they're the ones who, organize the event. He hosts tournaments up there, so opportunities for people to compete in sport Sambo, as well as combat Sambo, which is where Americans tend to do better because of the MMA connection, right. And then, through that you can get opportunities to compete overseas, so it's key that Sambo is built up on a grassroots level, that it has some kind of cultural backing,
right?
You know what I mean?
No, it's just not going for legs and attacks.
No.
Of course, they're on there, but
yes.
But there's something behind it. Like you said, so nothing gets lost. Break it down and bring it back and give everybody a lesson, man. Because of course, I witnessed some on Saturday. As far as the classes, and
sure.
Just like anything else, when you compete in a sports Sambo, there's rules. So there's things that you can't do.
Yeah. And
what are some of them?
Well, okay, I'm a good person to ask. I was an international referee for a while. Sambo is a wrestling style.
Right.
It's not grappling like you would. That's a false equivalence that a lot of people make. They're like, jiu-jitsu is grappling and judo is grappling and Sambo is grappling. That's incorrect. Sambo is primarily done from the feet. So just to preface the whole thing, your average hobbyist 35-year-old blue belt gets more ground time in a month than a Sambo guy does in an entire year. Typically.
Yeah.
Typically. There are some guys who focus on Newaza, the ground stuff, but basically the rules are, the way it's scored is similar to Greco in a lot of ways, Greco-Roman wrestling. You have to make contact on your opponent, right. Meaning grip them, and if you don't, that's considered passive, then you're avoiding the conflict.
Right.
So that is an actual rule. You can be penalized for not doing that.
Okay.
And then you make attacks, and then you're scored on the quality of the attack, right? And so, if I were to, just in layman's terms, hip toss somebody, if I hip toss them, they land on their back, and I stay standing, that's the judo equivalent of a pon. You win the match is over with. And it's like that in sports Sambo as well as combat. Combat with the strikes is scored almost identical. And it's called Chiste Pobjeda. Chiste Pobjeda just means like flawless victory, total victory. And then it breaks down from there. Like if I were to hip toss somebody and I land on top of them, that's great.
Yeah.
That's 4 points. You know.
Gotcha.
And then there are pins, just like there would be in judo. So I have to make chest-to-chest contact. I can do that from inside their guard. I can do it half guard, north, south, mount, like anywhere, basically, where I can make chest-to-chest contact.
Right.
I get their shoulders to touch the mat, and then as long as I keep those shoulders within 90 degrees of the mat, they're still pinned. And I hold that for 20 seconds, that's another 4 points. You know, it's
right.
So one of the things that I like about Sambo is it's not entirely objective because some of it is up to the discretion of the referee. Right. But it's different than a lot of how you see the unified rule set for MMA, where there's a little bit more like, you know, yes, there are sort of points involved and things that the referees are trained to look for, but in Sambo it's very dry, like, you know, you threw him on his back and you landed on him, that's chitire bola, it's 4 points, you know, like, and it makes it for me a little bit more objective. Like, I know what I need to do to win, right. You know. And then there's submissions, you know, too. The dominant thing is just to throw the guy on the ground and pin him, you know, and that's what I teach. Because if you want to win as much as possible, that's the shortest path to success, right?
Yeah, definitely. Like, what, 2 throws and you're good?
Yeah, that used to be the case. Yeah, that used to be a 12-point spread was technical superiority. And they stopped the match. I've won matches at World Cup like that. So they technical superiority, they're like, you're beating them by too much for them to catch up in the amount of time. So they call it, right? Now, rather than a 12-point spread, it's an 8-point spread. So if I throw someone real good and pin them, match is over with.
Wow.
Yeah, because that would be 4 points, you know?
Right.
As far as the submissions go, in sports Sambo, there's no chokes allowed. In combat Sambo, yes, you can choke. There are no twisting leg locks, so there's no heel hooks, no toe holds. You can't even do like headlock style pocket knee bar.
Right.
Everything has to be like center line. Straight ankle locks. You can do muscle compressions, so like calf crusher, bicep slicer, you know, anything like that. Arm locks. Because of the jacket and the way that you throw, it's a lot like judo. The most common submission is going to be an armbar. Okay. By far. You see more arm bars than anything else.
No, I mean, I would imagine, and the fact that you brought up, I mean, it's not jiu-jitsu, it's not Brazilian jiu-jitsu. I mean, of course, there's more submission, more ground time, like you said.
100%.
When it comes to the ground game. I mean, right off the bat, I mean, for the most part, and I've seen it, I mean, I had been away from the sport for years when it came to, like, training or just... But I started watching more jumping into guard. You know, that was always key. Like, they would just sit down and just start baiting everybody.
Sure.
Which makes, you know, it's kind of, I mean, it works for them. You know, they get the job done because they know what they got to do. But it doesn't make it as entertaining as people would imagine. You know, now you got to go and you see 2 guys sitting down scooting, trying to see, you know, play leg locks or whatever. But I mean, there was a tournament that happened. Let me bring this up.
Yeah, go for it.
Of course, you know, there was a Sambo, you know, guy taking on the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy.
Wally Korshev, yeah.
And what happened basically was, you know, the Jiu-Jitsu guy won. I mean, he did what he had to do. I mean, there was no... the points system, I guess, favored him.
Just the whole rule set.
Yeah, you know, only for the fact that, it's just everything was allowed as far as, you know, but, you know, what... On something like that, I mean, because of course, you know, they both accepted the match. I mean, I don't know if they talked about the rules or said, hey, let's not do this or do that. You know, let's count the throws. You know, work those count. You know, but it doesn't help when the other guy sits down real quick. You know what I mean? Like, it's just it's kind of like, okay, well, there goes that's out the window. You know, but I mean, what are your thoughts on something like that, man? I mean, was it an actual... Stylistically, was it a great matchup?
I mean, it's not a fair matchup because in the sense of like, let's put them to the test and see what's best. It wasn't a neutral rule set, right?
Exactly.
And And, you know, that's okay. Like, Wally Korshev is, I mean, my only regret really is that no one was able to see the things that he's capable of.
Yeah.
That guy's a freak. I mean, not only is he like a many-time world champion, he clowns other world champions, like on the mat. He's crazy good. But essentially what occurs in like situations like that, when a true Sambo man, not like I like a few leg locks and I you know, competed at, you know, a freestyle or Riley Bodycomb tournament 10 years ago, not that guy,
Right.
but an actual like Russian Sambo guy has very little Newaza like on the ground mat time. They aren't accustomed to defending chokes in the same way. Owali has a twin brother, like Ruotolo. Owali has a twin brother who's an international judo superstar, and Owali went more on the Sambo side, although he's competed in judo quite a bit too. But like in Sambo, if someone were to pull guard, that's considered passive.
Yeah.
So they don't do that, you know. One of the things that I noticed in that match, well, and another thing, but like to preface it, is Ruotolo only trains submission grappling. Yeah. That's what he does, period, end of story. I suppose he does some like BJJ too, like with the gi on, right? Wally Korshev does not. He trains Sambo, which is the objective is entirely different. You have a split second on the ground before the referee stops it and stands it back up if you don't have a submission locked, right?
Right.
Sambo is exclusively done with the jacket on.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as no gi Sambo. That doesn't exist. And you saw that some of that, like you could see him reaching to grip, like when he went for the Uchimata, reaching to grip, and he can't get it because you know you can't. You can't secure it in the same way. And then he was submitted with a technique that doesn't exist in Sambo, period, right? Which is fine, you know, like he agreed to it, but is it like a neutral rule set? What's best? No. Yeah. If they wanted to do something that was, that could test that better, maybe they would do freestyle Sambo, which doesn't exist anymore, but it used to be an official rule set in the United States, and it was recognized internationally too, although it was only really practiced here.
Right.
But the guy, Steve Kepfer, who kind of got that whole thing going, he doesn't involve himself with freestyle Sambo anymore, so it just doesn't exist. But in that case, you can pull guard if you wanted to, or do more ground stuff, but you only have 60 seconds flat when it hits the ground. So it gives you an opportunity to get off, you know what I mean?
Right.
But not so much,
but
right?
It's going to pressure the guy to hurry up and get it. Or
Restart. But then also the throws and takedowns are rewarded too, you know. And we saw like early in the engagement between Korshev and Ruotolo, that foot sweep, you know, that's very typical Sambo stuff. You know what I mean? Or maybe combat wrestling. So like what might be a neutral rule set. So if you're going to do it without the jacket, let's do combat wrestling.
Right.
Combat wrestling is what Shinya Aoki started off doing. That's what Masakazu Imanari started off doing. Ruotolo beat Shinya Aoki like fairly recently. That was a cool match. But combat wrestling is very similar. Limited amount of time on the ground. They favor the throws and takedowns. It just doesn't have a jacket. But it's a very popular rule set. How a lot of MMA guys got their start in Japan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I like it a lot.
No, yeah, and that's one of the things, because even, I mean, having gone through the sport, I mean, we used to train in the gi. You know, we used to train with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu gi. I mean, we knew leg locks, ankle locks. I mean, we used to throw everything in there. But going to tournaments, of course, we used to compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and they're like, hey, you can't do that. Or, hey, you can't do this. And it was because of the rank. We're like blue belts, and so
still like
it kind of limited us to what we could do. So we were like, okay, well, and we'd lose by points. You know? So it was like, okay, well, I lost by points. I mean, because I couldn't do things that I was used to.
Yeah.
So I see that as the same thing, because even I'll bring up, you know, the Texas Catch Wrestling, you know, coalition. These guys, you got to start from the feet. You can't jump in guard. You can't. They're like, these are moves you can't do, because they want action. They want people to clinch. They want people to go for throws, go for takedowns.
Sure.
Slams are awarded, you know, but because of that, a lot of people might not compete in that, because they're like, oh no, man, I want to jump guard. or you know what I mean. So it limits them now. So now, of course, they're not going to compete because they don't want to lose. So it just makes it interesting. And I mean, the fact, like you said, I mean, even if it was more something like that, like say let's get a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and let's get an actual sambo specialist to compete in Texas Calf Wrestling, because now it would make it interesting, because now you can't throw, now you can't slam, you can't jump, you know what I mean? Like it'll kind of make it fun, make it more action packed, I guess you can say.
Sure.
But I don't think that would happen though. I mean,
it's more combat ready. That I don't have anything ideologically against Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, for example. It's not my favorite thing.
Right.
I say that all day. It's not my favorite thing. I like Sambo a lot. That's my main thing. That's when even if I'm training Jiu-Jitsu, the way I behave on the mat doesn't look like a Jiu-Jitsu guy. Yeah. I have different type of habits, right? And using the guard is something that is very unique in the way that it is something very unique to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and part of what makes it so immediately effective. In fact, when people ask me, what martial art should I train because I want to defend myself, I say Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu every single time. Because if you train hard for 1 month, you're going to be more confident and skilled under pressure with techniques that you can use than most anyone that you would meet out in the street. That's just a fact, Of course, to be skilled, you have to put years into it. Yeah. But it being immediately effective, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is the thing, Whereas if you're like a wrestler or sambo or a judo guy, that point A to point B, rather than being a straight line, is much longer. Oh, yeah. So like a judo black belt, especially one like your average like local guy in the neighborhood, judo black belt, he might be very skilled, but like a solid blue belt in a combat style match would probably beat him up pretty good, because that line is so much, but like the habits of, although I respect the guard, being able to wrestle and throw and stay on top is more combat ready. That's why you see, generally speaking, right? That's why you see these combat sambo guys, not so much sport guys. Like a Wally Korshev is a sport sambo guy. Right. Granted, it wasn't an MMA match, but proving a point, right? You see Islam Makhachev, you see Nurmagomedov and their successes, in MMA. That's from combat sambo. Yeah. Because they are taught to make every strike significant. Okay, that doesn't mean it has to knock you out. That just means that it's significant. I'm throwing it for a reason. Oh, yeah. I'm not just trying to touch you. And there's a certain advantage to that, too. But just general strategy, right? I'm going to close a distance. I'm going to put you on your back, and I'm going to stay on top. Right. And that's what you see with those guys. Most people can't hang with that steady forward intensity of wrestling at that level. And I have direct experience with that. Those guys wrestle. I mean, we have standout wrestlers in the United States, right? But we don't have 300 guys on the mat at the same time who are all elite level wrestlers. That's what it was like training over there. Damn. Because just the baseline, because they so highly prized wrestling, it was part of the culture. Right. Their baseline is so much higher than ours. Oh, yeah. For that, you know what I mean? Yeah. And if you want to be completely dry and objective about it, even combat sambo, even with the strikes, it's a wrestling style. Yeah. You're rewarded for wrestling, not for striking.
No, that's true. I mean, there's a lot that changes. Going back to when we first started. I mean, of course, here in San Antonio, this was like in 2000. Yeah. And back then, like I would attend seminars. I would attend, go to other academies, like not here in San Antonio because there's none. But I mean, when it came to like jiu-jitsu back then, there was nothing. Literally, there was.
I trained in garages.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You see, and that's another thing. That was like later, after like 2 years, I started doing that myself, just teaching guys that didn't want to go to class. They just wanted to train on the Saturday. Cool. Yep. But I mean, I would go to and I did fairly well because we were freestyle. I didn't move like a jiu-jitsu guy, which you brought up earlier when you're on the mat. Mm-hmm. So a lot of guys didn't expect. Instead of the traditional, I gotta defend it this way, I have my own way. And so I would get out of situations. I would put people in situations I wasn't great. I wasn't like, no champion grappler, but I mean, just the fact that we did it every day, religiously.
Oh, that's awesome.
Go out there and roll and test everything, So of course we didn't. We stopped, but yeah, man. I mean, I go to seminars, and I mean, I was told more than once that it wasn't jiu-jitsu.
Oh yeah, I got that.
So I was like, well, man, it's I'm still tapping people out, man, and I was, I was out there. I mean, I travel with it, so of course, I wasn't gonna go and just get tapped out. I mean, I'd fight for a position, I'd fight for submission, I'd fight, and it was aggressive. I mean, looking back, I'm like, yeah, bro, it was like intense. We just grabbed that arm and like a pit bull, just went till we got it, and that was it. Yeah. But yeah, man. I mean, but that's one of the things, and I'll say this now. Like when I first started, my girl at the time, like she did Taekwondo.
Oh, right.
And I was like, cool. She went and I was watching the class, and I was like, man, I don't want to do that. Like there was too much. It looked like they were prolonging it. I was just like, man, no, I want to go and I want to fight and I want to know what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
And I mean, back then I looked everywhere. There was a Sambo guy. This was like probably 2000, because it was before I started training with Mike Rangel. That was off of I forgot the name of the street. Off of 35, it was a clinic, but he was like some Russian guy. It was an older dude, and he was like, yeah, Sambo, and I'm like, cool. So I went 2 days, and then like I didn't go for like a month because of work and everything else. So when I went back, it was gone, and it was before internet, before anything. So I don't know what happened to the dude, but and that's when I kept looking, and I found Mike Rangel, and ad on the paper, reality fighting, and I'm like, oh crap, like I gotta go see this, right? So I went, and right off the bat, I liked it, man, because it was physical, it was aggressive, it was made for, like you said, it was made for combat, and it was made for, I mean, back then I wanted to learn so I can fight people, but it's just, like I tell people, man, it just, I went so much that it kept me away from everything. So for years I didn't go anywhere because I was always training, and I was always, and so it saved my life in a way, but it got me away from everything else. But yeah, man, I mean, it's just, if you add rules and change rules, or there's going to be stipulations to everybody. I mean, of course, and I don't even know all the organizations out there, man, as far as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, I know there's NAGA, I know there's Worlds, I know there's IBJJF, but all of them have different rules, and that's why a lot of them don't compete in other ones, because...
Yeah, well, I mean, I didn't... Rules really are a big part of it, and not to like beat it to death, but it's just the truth. Like, in fact, I didn't start doing well internationally in Sambo until I really understood how to play the game. And you see that with good judo guys. You see that with good judo guys, and you see it with good jiu-jitsu guys.
Yeah.
That's a constant debate. That's part of the reason. I mean, I feel, from what I understand, why sub-only type events were developed, because then you can't game the rules in the same way. Like, hold this position for 3 seconds and look at the referee until he gives it to you, and then you move. A good Sambo player is like that. Yeah. Because it is a sport, it is a game.
Right.
That doesn't mean that I think everything in Sambo is useful. But I like it for what it is, and then when I started to understand it on that other level of like, these are the reasons why we behave like this. The reason why I want to stay active isn't just so the referee sees that I'm active and that guy's passive and he gets penalized for it.
Right.
But also, that's a good thing, engaging in combat with somebody in real life.
No, yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Dominating, like, in the exchange. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
the more active, if you're skilled, the more active, aggressive person is probably going to be the one who wins.
Yeah.
Probably, that doesn't take every factor out of the equation, but
no, not at all, man. I mean, there's so much to add and remove, but yeah, man. I mean, I brought you here for that reason, of course, man. I mean, when it comes to the sport, I mean, of course, you are the instructor here at the HOJ, and it's like yesterday, I was talking to a few individuals, and I was telling them, I said, man, Sambo, I hadn't heard that word in so long. I mean, of course, when you guys started here, I was like, cool, man, like, it's just, it's like one of those lost arts, where it's like not a lot of people do it, not a lot of people know about it, but they practice a lot of it. They don't know it, it's just added into curriculums for submission wrestling or submission wrestling, grappling. But yeah, man. But I mean, of course. I mean, when did all this start for you? I mean, when was it that you started training?
I kind of like what we were talking about before. I trained at I trained like old style American kickboxing stuff when I was in high school, and where I lived had the UFCs on VHS as they came out, so I started watching them, and I was obsessed with martial arts in general. Like I was whatever rank I was in Aikido, which is a mostly useless thing, but I thought it was cool then, right? And I was doing this like old Texas Karate League style American kickboxing, which that stuff was hard and full contact. And we did sparring every Friday before I'd go to school. And I was watching these UFCs, seeing these guys, Ken Shamrock, Royce Gracie, being able to shoot and take people down and attack the neck and attack the, attack the arms, attack the legs. And I was incorporating that into sparring to where I was actually getting training out of it to an extent, right? And that kind of like whet my appetite for it. And I did judo in college with Dan Baker in San Marcos. And I started training garage gyms, as in for jiu-jitsu. So in Austin, there were two schools. There's Helson Gracie. It was downtown on like 5th or 6th Street. It was upstairs. And that ended up becoming a much bigger school later on. And then there was Vandry. Those are the only two that I remember. Yeah. I was a poor punk rock kid. I didn't have no money to do that stuff. And so I trained in the garage with other poor punk rock kids who had some actual official training through like Vandry or Helson Gracie, and I think Randy Vera had a place at the time.
I know those guys, man.
Yeah, and so I started, my friend Mike had puzzle mats in his house. We would train there. My friend Morgan had puzzle mats in his garage. We would train there. I trained a little bit with Billy Boo at the like some church community center between here and New Braunfels. There's the wrestling team trained there, and we would go do grappling stuff alongside them. And then I was like, okay, well, I'll hop in. I finally had some money. I'll hop in and go start training at Vandry. I trained there, and then I moved to Houston and trained with Marcus Sequeira, Brazilo 2-1, and that's like super old school Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu training. It was tough. Then I started competing. And I noticed that in the gym, I was formidable. I was good. I could do things, And but when I was in competition, I wasn't doing all that well. And it might go back to some of that rules stuff, right? Yeah. And at the time, I was still training, living in Houston, but I was still training at Vandry when I was in Austin on the weekends with friends. And they started a judo program there with my friend Justin, and I started doing some judo stuff, and I liked it, and I was able to apply it, and I started competing in judo and doing really well in judo.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, I still wasn't sold on it, but I was experiencing success there that I wasn't experiencing in jiu-jitsu. And then Justin was like, I'd heard of Sambo for sure, because I watched Oleg Taktarov, and I was already a Fedor fan, and I loved Alexander Emelianenko and Andrei Arlovsky and all those guys. And he was like, hey, I'm going to go compete in this Sambo tournament in Austin. And this was like in 2009, something like that, like a little bit later on in the timeline, after I'd been training jiu-jitsu for 5-6 years, something like that. I watched him compete, and I love Justin. He got whooped bad, crazy bad, and I was like, man, that's the realest thing I've ever seen. You know what I mean? I was like, what was that? Because it was this giant throw. It was a Harai Goshi, if I remember right. This giant throw, and then before he even fully hits the mat, he's in an ankle lock, screaming. You know what I mean? And I was like, damn, that's cool. And so.
Not because it's on him, but...
Yeah. And so I started trying to focus on that you know, because I was like, that looks really cool, and it was more like congruent with my own skills.
Yeah.
I was already, Sambo ain't about leg locks. I thought it was at the time.
Yeah.
I was good at leg locks because I started doing those day one in these garage gyms because we're all a bunch of weird hooligans, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so I trained steadily for that next year and a half, 2 years, and I competed at the 2011 North American Sambo Championship, freestyle Sambo. So that's that rule set that doesn't exist anymore, right? The one that Steve Kepfer had. And I did really well. And I finished both matches in like under 30 or 40 seconds with a leg lock. And I was like, that's cool, because I got to do the standing portion of things that I was having success in judo, like feeling really good about that. I was able to apply the ground stuff that I was good at, and then get back up on my feet and do it again. It made sense for me.
Yeah.
And so I was like feeling myself, and I was like, man, maybe I'm really good at the Sambo thing. And then USA Sambo had started to like pick up again, and that's the real thing.
Yeah.
That's the real thing. And they were like, hey, I was married at the time. They were like, hey, we need someone to go fight combat Sambo in Kazakhstan. And I was like, I'll do it. And then my ex-wife was like, you are not going to Kazakhstan. And I didn't know anything about Kazakhstan. I didn't know anything about Russia at the time or anything like that. And I was like, okay, well, you know, I'm listening to you. I understand that you're concerned. And I'm not BSing. Like, those are real things I said. Like, I understand that you're concerned, and I respect that, and I don't want you to worry. So I won't go to this one. But if they ask me again, I'm going to go.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go. And then like 2 weeks later, they were like, hey, do you want to go to Moscow? And I was like, yes. And I trained so hard for that. And like 2 or 3 weeks out, I tore my intercostal and my rib. I was having a really hard time moving around. But I mean, just like hundreds of repetitions a day, doing my throws and takedowns, working on groundwork, because my strategy was I'm going to finish this guy on the ground, right? And I fight at the Kralompiev, which is the final stage of before the World Cup.
Right.
It's the big Moscow Super Cup. That's like the colloquial name for it, the Super Cup.
Yeah.
And I fight this guy named Vladimir Balikov, who I didn't know was like a 6-time world champion.
Oh,
and he was so strong that like I couldn't stay standing. And I'm not talking about he was throwing me. I'm talking about when he put his hands on me, I took a knee. He was just brutal strong. And I attempted what I could, went for like a couple flying arm bars, not understanding the sport. And then they're like, you're being passive, you need to attack. And in my head, I'm like, I am attacking, you know, but not according to that rule set. And I get it now. They want you to grip, engage, right? And that dude threw me so hard one time, I don't even know what it was. Like, I know he threw me with an Osotogari, and he pinned me like to where it hurt, where I was like, I don't want to fight anymore. No, it sucked. It really did. And then he threw me with something that like I don't even remember. It happened so fast, right? Match was over with, done. And then
that was it?
Yeah, and I was like, I can't have that happen again. You know? And so I became obsessed. And then beyond that, I left jiu-jitsu completely behind. Didn't train it at all, or hardly at all. I was still competing in judo because that was the closest thing I had to Sambo.
Right.
But then I was traveling to Russia every few months, training or competing. And I did that for almost the next 10 years.
And I gotta ask, but were you still married when you were doing that?
Almost the whole time, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, almost the whole time. And I competed at World Cup a bunch. I competed in like lower stages of the World Cup. Like we fought in England, Croatia, Israel, Russia. I started competing in other sports that kind of fed into Sambo too. Like it was like at Igor Kuranoy's place in Moscow. He runs a school called Bariets. Bariets is a sumo school also. So I started competing in sumo. Belt wrestling, which is basically like a suplex contest, but you see some of the like Central Asian guys in Sambo fight like
I've
that.
seen that. Yeah.
This is a suplex contest. I loved it. I got completely destroyed in that too, but I loved it. And
but I mean, something like that. It was based on weight. Was it weight classes, or how did that work?
Yeah. Because I fought 62 kilos, so it was about 135 pounds. And I competed in Mongolian wrestling bulk because there's a lot of that bleeds into Sambo. There's a lot of good Mongolian Sambo players. And just stuck with it, and that's just all my focus was. And then I got into like the refereeing and administration side of things. I started like a pretty successful Sambo club in Austin called Model the Sport Club, and we hosted.
During what time was that? What year?
I think we started Monolith in 2010, and it was, my side of it lasted until maybe 2016, and then Justin hosted like his own kind of judo sambo classes that were part of Monolith at Cooper MMA in Austin, up until maybe pandemic times.
Oh wow!
Yeah, but I just became obsessed, and part of it was because I really liked the sport, and part of it was like, man, I really don't want to get my butt whooped like that ever again.
Oh yeah.
And it took me a long time. I always did really well here in judo and sambo. I would compete in some O'Reilly Bodycombs tournaments. I would do really well. I would compete in judo tournaments. Like I competed in a lot of judo here, and I always did really well. I understood the sport. A lot of the sambo that I was learning bled into that too, to where my gripping was better than a lot of people locally.
Right.
The entire game was more aggressive. My throws were more refined. Like my training methodology was really good from training and competing in Russia. And then the last time I competed was in 2017. I fought in Greece at the World Cup, and I wrestled a world champion to a draw, and then I beat a guy from Kazakhstan 11-0. That's a lie. I went out on a high note. I would love to be able to do that again. Life got in the way for a little bit. So.
No, yeah, I can only imagine, man. Especially with the COVID. I mean, was that before COVID?
Right, yeah, right before COVID. I was teaching high school at the time, and I was having a little bit more trouble getting the money together and the time off to compete in some of this stuff. The opportunities to train, as far as like having a good team to train with, weren't as good in terms of judo and sambo. And I mean, really, since I moved back to San Antonio in December, this is the first time that I've trained steadily in any kind of sport like this since about 2017. Damn. And the first time I've really messed with jiu-jitsu for probably a decade. And it's been fun. I would like to get back into it because, I'm in my 40s now. So like if I go compete in a World Cup, it's going to be in the Veterans World Cup.
Yeah. And
people have feelings about that kind of stuff, right? Because I hear people talk about jiu-jitsu competitions, and they're like, "Oh, he competed in Masters." That decline in athletic ability, it's different over there. It's different because a lot of the guys that you compete against in Masters stuff here are dads who decided to get into BJJ. There's nothing wrong with that,
right?
But these aren't guys who have competed and trained BJJ since they were 6 years old.
Yeah.
You go to Veterans World Cup in sambo or judo, for that matter. Judo's even deeper in terms of like widespread talent, right? Yeah. Sambo's like judo is like the king throwing sport, and sambo's like somewhere right here, in terms of skill level, because the government pays for a lot of these guys to train from when they're,
Oh yeah.
But you don't see that skill level decline. These guys have trained their whole life. You don't see it decline until they're maybe 55, 60 years old.
Right.
And so like those old dudes get after it so hard. It's a different thing.
You see, and it's the same with like boxing. I mean, there's kids that start off from boxing as kids and they box all the way up.
Yeah.
And so they kind of never lose that, even when they stop training or they're not competing anymore. I mean, a lot of them can still move, man. I mean, they don't move as fast but compared to somebody who just started boxing like last week, it's gonna make a difference. But that's a good thing you brought up, man, because of course, I mean, like when I started training myself, I think I was 24, and there was guys that were from high school, like 17, 18-year-olds, and I mean, they were. You had one that was a football player, and this guy was just like freaking a beast, bro. Like every time he went hard, he was just and at that age, I was able to fend him off, and I was like, okay, well, I'm not like a 17-year-old kid. I was just like, all right, I was able to move on him, and I mean, I had a few months in training against him, so I was able to, reverse him, submit him. I mean, he gets pissed off as hell, but it was just like, okay, well, my mindset was different. It wasn't, I wasn't like, okay, I'm gonna try this. At that point in time, I honestly wanted to compete. I was like, man, I want to do this. I want to see how far I can go with it, and. I mean, I was obsessed with it. I mean, it's like every opportunity I had, I was like, I mean, back then he'd be like, oh man, no class this weekend. And I'm like, damn. And then he'd change it up and say like, hey, you know what, if you're gonna show up Saturday, I'll be here. I'm like, dude, I'll be here, bro. Like, I was like, I want to train. And that's kind of like where the garage days happened for me, because it was like there was no class on Saturday, so I was like, man, I was running into people like that would attend that class and they didn't like it, and then they would somehow contact me. I don't even know to this day how they would get a hold of me, man. They call me before cell phones, right?
Yeah, right. Hit your beeper
up. But yeah, they contact me. Hey, man, and I was there. I didn't like it, bro, and I saw how you were helping everybody out, man. How much would you be willing to come and train some of the guys? I've got like 8-10 guys here, and I'm like, yeah, sure. And so I would show up, and it was just like. It was funny because the guys are like, oh yeah, man, I'm good, bro. Like I can do this and that, and I would roll with them. And maybe I was like a year in, maybe a year and a half in training, and I mean, it was like nothing, bro. Like I would submit them, and I'm like, bro, like y'all aren't that good, bro. Like it was, and so I would, okay, let's train, let's go over this, and I would show them technique, and a lot of it was. A lot of drills, show them like, man, you got to drill it. Like, check this out, and I would go over it and over it and over it. And that's kind of like where I guess a lot of them got weeded out because they wouldn't show up because they're like, man, I just want to learn the arm bar. And I'm like, man, you can't just, there's a routine to it, man. You got to learn how to transition. You got to learn. It's just not like, so it was just, but yeah, man. I mean, the same thing with schools. I mean, a lot of schools would attend the class and they didn't like it because they figured, hey, I'll go one day and I'll be able to fight next day, or compete. My question to you is this: I mean, when it comes to sambo, I mean, of course, what can people expect from the class? Like, to say I show up today, I mean, what's the curriculum? What is it that I'm going to experience?
Well, today would be a combat sambo, so that means that we would be.
Okay, let's say tomorrow, not today. I don't want to get hit, bro. No, but I mean, okay, but today, what would it consist of, bro?
Well, it's a good question in the sense. Start off, so. If you go to most, this is the biggest thing that I noticed difference training-wise that I try to apply here, like the ways in which I've trained here in the United States as opposed to the ways in which I trained overseas, is a lot of it has to do with repetition. A lot of it, because you go to a jiu-jitsu class, very broadly speaking, like almost across the board. And you'll see instructors show a technique, and people will do 2 or 3 repetitions of it, and then sit on the mat like this and look at each other.
I was going to say that, sit and wait.
Yeah, and then they show another one and another one, and a lot of times there isn't like a real connection between any of the techniques, or it's a very tenuous connection. Like there's no the logic behind it is, let's just say, loose, right? I would go to these sparring sessions at Sambo 70 in Moscow, and we would do repetitions for 2 hours nonstop. There's this thing that they would have us do. It's common at judo. In Sambo, they call it nabrasovanie. It's just like rapid throwing.
Right.
And you would do that for 2 hours. I've done so many fireman's carries in my life. I've probably done 8,000 or 9,000. And I'm good at it. Why? Because I've done it so many times,
repetition.
And you would see, and that's the way we would train. It was more this sounds like it's all philosophical, but there's a ton of science behind it. You just gave yourself to the repetitions, right?
Yeah.
This is what I'm going to do for the next hour. And then you hit that flow state where you're just throwing, wrestling, throwing.
Yeah.
That's what makes you good.
Yeah.
You know, so when I run classes, I try to straddle the line between what really works, which is just doing so many repetitions that you want to vomit, versus the like more immediate satisfaction American mindset of like, I want to be good now, I want to learn now. Because also, like, my coaches over there, when I first started training, they would, the biggest thing that they ever said is they were like, you could be pretty good, but you do too many things. What they mean is I was taking too many different kinds of grips and attempting too many different kinds of throws.
Right.
They were like, you need to get good at one grip and one throw, maybe 1.5. That was it. You know, and that was their advice. And you see that with those high level guys.
Yeah.
But it doesn't end there. Like, you see that in jiu-jitsu too.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, like when, you know, back in mid 2000s when Marcelo Garcia was guillotining everybody, he decided to focus on that.
Oh yeah.
And he did it. Yeah. You know, when Rodolfo Vieira was throwing everybody with that weird kind of sort of Tayatoshi. I mean, he's a massive dude in jiu-jitsu, like on the world level.
Yeah.
He was doing that same throw to everybody.
Yeah.
You know? So, like, when you're good at something, when you hyper-specialize in a thing, it doesn't limit you.
Yeah.
That was that Russian mindset. It doesn't limit you. You're so good at that thing that whether people know that it's coming or not, you're going to be successful. And your body and mind starts to make the adaptations necessary to where when you get in a less than ideal situation, like I went for the fireman's, that's my Tokiwaza, that's what I'm best at.
Right.
I've thrown amazing people with that and gotten destroyed trying to do other stuff. Okay? So I go for a fireman's and they sprawl out a little bit where I can't like tuck them in and finish the way that I want to. I've done it so many times that I can automatically transition to another finish. You know what I mean? My body and mind makes the adjustments necessary in order for my technique to be successful.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you
know?
transition. I mean, that's actually, like you said, I mean, because that's one thing I always, I used to push. 2005 I was actually teaching here in San Antonio.
Yeah.
And it mostly started because I was working nights at the post office, and during the day there was nothing.
Yeah.
Nobody had jiu-jitsu classes in the morning back then. And so I started doing it. I was like, you know what, I'll start, but because I want to train. And so it actually became a thing, and we had like up to like 32 students, man, like in the morning.
That's super
from
cool,
all sorts of life, different blue collar to, you know, nurses. I mean, you know, I think we had like 2 guys from the sheriff department, and it was fun, man. I mean, I had fun with it, but I used to drill. I used to drill everybody, and my way of thinking back then was like, okay, you know what? We're gonna clinch. Okay, let's go. We're gonna grapple and see where we're in. Okay, I ended up on side control. Okay, this is where we're gonna start the class today. We're gonna start from 2 escapes from side control and then 2 attacks from side control. And so
some kind of connection.
Yeah, because I actually wanted, like you said, I didn't want to. Okay, get in my half guard, and I'm thinking, how did I get there? Like I wanted to actually answer that question, and I was no master. I was no nothing. You know, I was just a guy that wanted to learn and keep learning. But
that's what I say about myself.
Yeah, you know, and I enjoyed it. So it's just like I made it fun. You know, I have guys now that were trained that started off with me that are black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm like, dude, I'm blessed. I'm like, dude, that's awesome. They kept up with it.
Yeah, it's
and
cool.
You know, but it's just like they always kind of like, man, you know, back there, I remember, bro, like everything, like all those warm ups they used to have us do. Like I have my guys doing them. Like, and I'm like, cool, man, because it was good. You know, it worked. It was repetition, but it was like conditioning. We got a workout out of it. We got muscle memory. We got endurance. We built everything up, and now okay, let's start class. And half the people are winded, but you know, that's how you build up them lungs, man.
Oh yeah, yeah, and like I said, I think part of Soviet sports science was way different than the way we did things here. You know, so like a lot of the Russian athletes peak much later, like when they're in their 30s, as opposed to a lot of our guys who peak when they're much younger, like later teens. And it has to do with like developing them as athletes over a longer period of time, and just like the training and methodology that fed into that. It was a different experience. The whole philosophy behind how we trained and what we did and what would make you successful was just different, and it worked. A lot of those guys have a longer athletic life, because we see standouts here in the United States, right?
Yeah.
Like I said, you don't see a giant stable of guys that are amazing grapplers. You see guys that are pretty good, they've been doing it for a while, and then you have your standouts.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of times, those standouts burn out, A lot of times, those standouts aren't sufficiently challenged, and then the guys who are more baseline aren't developed, So, like, that was another thing that I noticed a lot, was that getting everybody developed, they wouldn't throw you into the fire all the time. It was like little planned incremental challenges to where you didn't get discouraged, you didn't get stomped, you didn't, it was like, we're going to put you in an appropriate skill level competition. We're going to have you train with someone that matches, with you.
Right.
It was always an appropriate challenge. And so more people got developed into, more highly skilled athletes. That's what I saw, That's one of the things that I miss about training there. The mentality is a little bit different. It's more playful. That doesn't mean not intense.
Right.
It's more playful. When you are stiff and tight, like wrestling, training Sambo, say we're doing randori, sparring, and you're stiff and tight, and you are going 100%, your window of perception of the world is getting narrower and narrower and narrower, because now you're in this like fight, flight, or freeze mode. And a lot of times with fighting, you see freeze.
Oh, yeah.
Where people are just like, and nobody's learning anything. The guy that you're stomping the hell out of isn't learning anything. You aren't learning anything.
Yeah.
And you would feel like, and that's not to say that the sparring wasn't intense, trust me it was, but there's a more playful aspect of it where like, I'm here to challenge you, you're here to challenge me. If you're of a lower skill level, I'm going to work on some techniques, different entries, different grips, stuff like that. But it was never like, I encounter this and I really don't hear. That's one of the cool things about House of Jiu-Jitsu, and I really mean that. Most jiu-jitsu places I go, especially when they see that I'm not a jiu-jitsu guy, I've had such a weird journey of politics with jiu-jitsu. Yeah. Part of the reason why I left it behind for so long, or I never quit training jiu-jitsu, I just only trained with very certain people under controlled conditions. It was because when people found out that I wasn't a jiu-jitsu guy, it was like I'm going to kill him. You know what I mean? Like, in training mentality. And that I don't get anything out of that. I don't like it. I'm not interested in hurting anyone or being hurt.
Right. No, yeah.
Unless it's a competition and I signed up for it.
Right.
And then I'm like, well, I signed up for it, you signed up for it. Hopefully we both come out okay, Yeah. But in training, I mean, especially back then, I had my lip almost completely severed from a dude kneeing me in the face in a jiu-jitsu context. My nose broken over here, just all kinds of stuff, and it was malicious. I didn't like it. Yeah. Whereas we could have just been playing, making each other better. Oh, yeah. And when you're in that more relaxed, it's not completely relaxed, but that more relaxed mind state, which is what they did a really good job of capturing in sparring over there. Yeah. Everybody's getting a benefit out of it. And that principle, that judo principle of mutual benefit and welfare, that's like part of judo, right? Judo's a huge part of Sambo, especially over there. Now I'm benefiting not just myself, but the people around me. And as they improve, I improve. Oh, yeah. As I improve, they improve. And so there's like a more community aspect of it where like we're all getting better.
No,
as opposed to
definitely.
I'm gonna win this or I'm gonna go home and cry in the shower or whatever. You know, like I didn't encounter that very much over there. I encounter it in the United States constantly.
No, yeah, because even us, like when we first started, I mean, we used to be more of a. We had guys that, I mean, you know, it's on all over Facebook and memes like, oh, let's go light, and then we go,
Yes,
we
yeah,
fist
yeah,
bump, and it's like they just charge, and you know they're trying to freaking rip my head off, and but I was good, man. So I always fended myself, and I always, you know,
No doubt, you do what you have to do.
Yeah, I got them in positions to where they're like, oh wait, hold on, my back, bro, my back, you know, and then we stop, and I'm like, you wanna go again? Oh man, I'm gonna sit it out.
Yeah.
And there was those guys, and those are the guys that never learned, never got any better.
They
Never-
plateau. They go.
Yeah, they just, I mean, people already knew. They come in and are like, oh man, this guy don't want to roll, you know. And it was just like a common, man. And for me, like even like I'll go back, like when we first started, like when I first started, you know, it was like, I mean, guys were like, man, they were tearing me up, man. I mean, I was like, I only went for like the first month, I only went 1 day a week because I was getting freaking beat up that bad, bro. Like it was just like brutal. Like
I
was
remember
like,
those
damn.
days well. Yeah.
And so the second month, I was like, man, okay, I feel a little bit better. You know, I was getting stretched out, so I was able to train a little bit harder. And like within, I'd say like 3 months, I was like, I was able to fend people off. And they were like,
Sure.
yeah, dude, like,
Yeah.
and it's just because I got used to their aggression, their way to, I knew what they were going to attack. And it was just like the same thing. And when I started realizing that, I was like, okay, well, he's going to go for this, I'm going to go for this. And so it worked in my favor, you know, because they were always like, I'm going to get that same arm, same arm. When we trained with Michael Rangel, one of the things I liked, I mean, there was a lot of things I liked about the class,
Yeah.
but one of them was that even in striking, he's like, all right, switch. Like, we just switched softball, which was awkward as hell. And we trained softball, but it helped because when we'd be sparring, we'd switch automatically, and it was like, man, we're still fending, you know, doing good. But the same thing with jiu-jitsu, it was like, okay, you know what, get the other arm. And I'm like, okay, well, I would literally forget, like, well, how did I get the other side? Like, I'm having to redo it just to learn. But you get used to that as well. So it's like now, if I'm in a situation where I'm like, damn, I'm so used to attacking this arm, but now I'm on this side, okay, well, I'm going to attack this arm. And so it worked out. You know, I enjoyed it. I had fun with it. I mean, we had guys that would come in, and right off the bat, I was like, hey, man, let's partner up. Because I already knew, like, dude, these guys are gonna beat them up. They ain't gonna come back, you know.
Yes,
so.
that's such a big part of it, because that's another part of why I do classes the way I do. Because I mean, I just had a conversation with a student here last week about that. You know, like I want everyone to want to come back.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly, man.
And that doesn't mean we don't train intensely. That doesn't mean that we don't spar. That doesn't mean we aren't breaking a sweat. What it means is that I want everyone to get built up.
Yeah.
Everyone. I don't want someone to get smashed up and be like, I'm never coming back, because that happens all the time.
Bro, like,
you know,
I mean,
I'll take the L. Throw me. I don't care. I've been thrown so many times. I'll take an L. If it makes you feel good, go for it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
well,
I don't lose any sleep over that.
no, for sure.
And then maybe now I have a new student. You know?
Yeah.
Maybe now that person can benefit me, I can benefit them, they benefit the team. You know what I mean?
No, I mean, it's growth, man. I mean, it has to do with, you know, there's a lot that has to do with it. For example, I mean, same thing, man. When we used to roll, like I was starting, I was only a purple belt. So I was rolling with white belts, blue belts. I mean, I had guys from other schools that would come in and like, hey, man, can I jump in? And I'm like, yeah, go ahead, bro. Like,
Yeah, go for it.
you know, they sign up and they're like, well, you roll too? And I'm like, yeah, if you want to roll, I'll roll. Like, I never said no. I never said no, bro. Everybody, I mean, people, I'm not going to say they were calling me out, but I knew they were, you know. So I'm like, yeah, I'll roll with you. And I was good. I wasn't great, but I always played enough to where, okay, I'm scrambling, I'm turning, I'm transitioning, I'm doing reversals. Same thing, they're attacking. And I'm looking at the time, and I'm like, all right, I got 3 minutes. I would purposely just attack. Like, okay, I'm gonna make sure you tap out before you leave.
Yeah.
And then afterwards, they'd be like, damn, all right, man. And I'm like, hey, man, come back, bro. Like, and I wouldn't mean it. I wouldn't on purpose tap them out just to, oh man, I did this. But I just wanted them to know that I knew. Like, hey, I'm good. I'm not the greatest out there. Those guys out there that can smash me left and right. But
Yeah.
I knew what I was teaching, and I knew what I had, and I was still learning myself. So it wasn't like I was like, hey, I'm a 8th degree purple belt or anything like that, man. But it was just like, but it was good, So, but the guys would never come back, man.
Yeah.
But it I did what I did, man, and I loved it, bro. I mean, if I could have stuck with it, and I would have still been doing it. I mean, it's just I made it fun. I mean, I had guys who are teaching on Sundays, well, they will come in on Saturday and they're like, man, can you teach on Sundays? And I'm like, yeah, you know, if I get enough people that want to come, sure. So they would come in. I mean, guys from Lockhart, from corporate. I mean, just from all over, they would drive over here.
Yeah.
And the first thing they'd say is like, man, how much is drop-in fee? And I'm like, bro, you're driving 2 hours, man. It's free, bro. Just jump in, you know. And because of that, it grew even better, bro. Like I used to have guys from other towns that they were like, man, well, I'm a karate black belt. I'm trying to learn jiu-jitsu, and I'm like, bro, come. You know, it's for everybody, man. Like, let's just all learn, and you know. But yeah, man. But I mean, as far as your sambo class, man, what's the schedule for you guys here?
Well, we do combat sambo on Mondays at 7:30, and so that's going to include striking, incorporating striking into your wrestling and throwing. That's the big thing.
Right.
And then Wednesday, Patrick does the judo classes, which are similar. I mean, that's just a fact. You know, people who make this like hard separation between judo and sambo, that's just incorrect. Sambo was developed by a judo guy.
Oh yeah.
And it was almost identical in rules until maybe late 90s, early 2000s. You know, when it really started to separate.
Yeah.
Other than a few things, you know. So Patrick has those classes, the judo classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7:30.
Right.
That's going to cover a lot of the same stuff. And then I do sport sambo, which is just the pure wrestling part of it, 7:30 on Wednesdays. So that's Monday through Thursday. We have something going on.
Right.
Combat sambo, judo, sport sambo, judo. And then I think it's 10:30 a.m. on Saturdays. Then we have a mix that we call the judo sambo class.
Oh, okay. That's where both you guys come in and go.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's been good. You know, we've had guys do judo competitions and do well. You know, Patrick is a really good coach. He has like really good details on fundamental throws, and that's the stuff that works. You know, and I'd like to grow it a little bit more. You know, in terms of having people, because when it comes to martial arts, I don't feel like a martial art is like realized its full potential until you compete. That doesn't mean you have to be a competitor. No.
Right.
But you need to go compete once.
Right.
You know, you need to feel somebody with a referee between you, meaning that the stakes are a little bit higher.
Oh, definitely.
You need to feel that because it changes your perspective on everything. Yeah. You know, so I would love to build it up. Like I had a really good successful club in Austin where we would host tournaments and stuff like that. I would like to do that here. And the weekend, seeing people come to that summit gave me a little bit of hope that maybe that could happen. You know what I mean? I didn't realize that the turnout was going to be that good or that people would be that focused and interested.
Yeah.
You know, now that I see it, I'm like maybe less cynical.
No, you see, but I mean, like this weekend was great, man, and that's why I kept telling people even on this. I'm like, man, a lot of people did miss out, bro. Like, I know here at the HOJ there was a couple fights going on this weekend, so a lot of the guys worked in town. So it was bad timing on them because, of course, a lot of them went to the fights to support the other fighters, of course. But yeah, I mean, it's something that truly, I feel they need to participate in because it's like, okay, you know what? It's gonna, if anything, it's gonna grow their mind, their perspective, their journey, especially if they're doing MMA. You know, because these are things that you can utilize when you're out there. I mean, I know. Because of Hoist Gracie. I mean, the other Gracies that have participated in MMA for years, people kind of like, okay, I got to learn jiu-jitsu to get into MMA. You know, it's like
it's a good skill.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely, man. I mean, I was kind of doing it. You know, we were more freestyle than anything, but that was the objective. Was like, man, I want to learn the guard. I want to learn sweeps. Ours was more aggressive, so like you said, it was more throws, takedowns, and top control. You know, bottom, of course, we learned because we wanted to get out of it. You know, reversals, escapes. But yeah, man, I think it's something that they definitely need to get a hold of. I mean, you know, like you said, I mean, the class, I mean, it's still small. It's not a huge class, but I mean, I can see it growing, man. It's just a matter of people knowing that it's here, you know, because even now, I mean, the whole summit thing, like, it did blow my mind, bro. Like, I ain't gonna lie. Like, Saturday, I was like, damn, like, it was a good turnout.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that it happened. I mean, I'm glad that you guys were able to participate and get that going because now, I mean, there's other schools, smaller schools that might see that and be like, you know what, I want to incorporate that. I want to come over here and learn, and whether they take it back and teach it over there as a curriculum, or you know what I mean, like just add it to whatever they're doing now. You know, I think it's beneficial, man. It's cool. I mean, I've always been a fan. I mean, you know, like you said, I mean, Sambo is not necessarily leg locks, you know, foot locks. For us, when we first started, it kind of was. I mean, that's kind of like we were like, oh man, we got to do this.
Well, but there's a reason for that, right?
Yeah.
But like real Sambo, like I said, it's almost interchangeable with Judo. Those are just facts. But in different parts of the country of Russia, or even the former Soviet Union in general, people practice different like permutations or styles of Sambo that were sort of unique to the area. Like when you go train Sambo in Moscow, it's very Judo based. But you can go to other parts of the country, like where Oleg Taktarov was from, and they did a lot of leg locks at his academy. So when you were first exposed to Sambo, like the way I was, watching Oleg Taktarov submit people, then you're like, oh, it must be about leg locks. And then when it became a little bit more popularized in the United States with Riley Bodycomb and Steve Kepfer, Riley was submitting people with leg locks, you know, and so that gave it a lot of that impression. But saying that Sambo is about leg locks is like saying that Jiu-Jitsu is about omoplatas. Does it exist? Absolutely. Does it happen all the time? Absolutely not. And there's always one thing that I find, I mean, even coaching Sambo now is, I'm not interested in proving Sambo's efficacy to anybody. I don't care. If you don't like it, I don't care. Yeah. If you don't want to come train, I don't care.
Right.
But there's always that issue where people don't find it as legitimate as other combat-ready martial arts. Yeah. You know, that was one of the disappointing things, like about the one championship thing, where I felt like the rules were way skewed towards Ruotolo. And I was even joking over the weekend. I was like, Khrushchev's going to lose, and then I'm going to lose students. You know what I mean? Because people really are that fickle here. They don't see the, you know. And so that's a constant battle, too. How does it measure up to Jiu-Jitsu? I was like, well, I don't use the BJJ yardstick to measure Sambo, so you shouldn't use a Sambo yardstick to measure BJJ. That doesn't make any sense. They're two different things. And then also, like, you know, it's overcoming, which is a whole other conversation, but it's overcoming some of just the bad politics within itself that Sambo went through over the past 15 years or so in order to get it where I feel where it's back, has a grassroots, you know, thing where people are participating and competing and excited about it, you know, and take it for what it is, you know. And again, seeing people come like they did this past weekend gives me hope. Like maybe it can happen again, you know.
No, and I mean, as long as people participate, and I mean, just the showing that happened over the weekend, I keep bringing that up, but it was impressive. I mean, I was like, wow, okay, you know what? There's enough people to where, you might be able to get a tournament going, or at least do like a 4-match, like not super fight, but you know what I mean, like get it involved to where now it's like, okay, you know what? We're gonna do this every 2 months, 3 months, you know, and just get guys from other schools to come and train and compete. You know, that'd be pretty cool, man.
Yeah, we've talked about, well, because I did it in the past. Often when we would have Sambo tournaments, we would have a catch or a combat wrestling tournament with it.
Yeah.
And so I've talked with Chris from the Catch Wrestling Coalition about, in the past, it's been a while since we've communicated, but about having Sambo, even just exhibition matches, attached to some of those events.
Yeah, that would be pretty
but then that runs into this other problem, where it's going to make me sound all cynical too, but I mean, it's my experience, of like there being, so catch is a fringe sport. Right? So you don't get a lot of your phenoms going to catch. They go to BJJ because it's more readily available. That's nothing against catch. That just means that most guys are going to go where the weight is, right? It's like that with Sambo too. Yeah. So there's that. But then there's also the instructor side of things. So like there have been so many frauds when it comes to like, I'm a Sambo instructor, and I don't even pitch myself as being, I'm not a master of sport.
Yeah.
I don't pitch myself as being an expert. What I do have is real on the ground experience.
Yeah.
What I have done is compete a lot internationally, you know, but do I think I'm an expert? No. Do I know stuff that you don't? Probably.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But a lot of guys will, you know, win a Naga match by leg lock and watch a couple videos, and now they're a Sambo expert.
Right.
And you run into that a lot with the sport because it's fringe. You see that in catch too, you know? And so like sometimes like I want to put those events on and help it like gain legitimacy for both of us, let's say, right? But I also don't want to draw in any more hacks than we already have. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because I want there to be authentic wrestling training. I want there to be authentic Sambo training. I don't really know how to navigate that yet, you know.
Right. I understand.
And one of the, you know, that was one of the things that Steve Kepfer did really well when he had the ASA and they were doing freestyle Sambo, is they just kept at it, and they created their own kind of legitimacy by having training camps, doing seminars, hosting tournaments. Greg Humphreys in Iowa would fly people over to Moscow, and they would go to training. I've done it. Go to training camps with Richard Crenwelge over there. They put in the time. That's what I'm saying. You know, like that's a big part of it. So.
No, for sure, man. But I mean, of course, man, I've had you here for an hour, my man. I do thank you. I mean, this is just something I've been wanting to do as far as plug in yourself and as far as what you're doing and what's going on here at the HOJ. Like I said, man, I mean, it's out there. I mean, I know there's going to be more people out there watching, and nonetheless, I mean, of course, with the some of the success that some of the Sambo guys have had in MMA or just in competition or in general. But man, I mean, I do thank you. And class today, you guys are going to be out there? Bit. All right, my man. Well, I do thank you, everybody out there. Of course, once again, this is Spider DeFi Car Podcast. Till next time, follow up. Give it a few seconds and it'll throw me off. But yeah, man, I do thank you, bro. I mean, like I said, I've been wanting to do this for a while, so